Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Because Football podcast. I am Andrew Bagley, your host. Thank you for being here today. We're very excited to have you and to have a great conversation around storytelling in this beautiful game of soccer. We're going to use an example of a club in MLS. We're going to talk not only about telling the story of the club, but how can clubs leverage influencers and really combine forces and tell great stories around the game to get people interested and connected. We're going to welcome to the show Prerna Aneja. She is the digital and influencer marketing coordinator for San Jose Earthquakes of MLS. So first, Prerna, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Really excited to talk about everything, soccer, MLS, San Jose, all the fun stuff.
Let's start with some of your soccer background, right? I know
Yeah.
we've talked before, your brother was a big time player, loved the game, but what was kind of some of the pieces, part of your pre-Earthquakes soccer experience and things like that then you brought into this role?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think my intro to soccer is definitely through my brother. Like, I've heard of it, watched it a little bit, was not my thing at all. A lot of running, so not me. I don't run. I was a swimmer, so you don't run. If you're a good swimmer, you don't run. That's just kind of how it goes. You get
Different
frog legs.
cardio, very different, but still intense.
Definitely a whole different ballgame. So definitely, we're about 4.5 years apart. So watched him through Pee Wee soccer all the way to high school, and club soccer now, intramurals. I did get my referee license, like the intro,
Oh,
but
that's
never
right.
really
Yeah.
refed a game. Yeah, I did not
It's
ref a
always
game.
there for you. We need
It's
referees in the
always
United
there.
States. We
Yeah.
need you.
Yes. I know the dog so rule and what an offside is, and that's pretty much it. But definitely, it was definitely interesting to see the rule side of everything and kind of understand the game more and actually know what the calls were all about. So it's definitely a learning experience, and I think it's definitely helped kind of going in when you're sitting up in the press box and you see something because you kind of have that big overview angle, which is really nice actually. You get to see the whole field, and so definitely easy to see. It's like, oh no, that guy was off. But
And you're
definitely fun to
breaking down,
be.
you're like, actually, bylaw 12, section 3, right? Like, you can do this or not.
I'm just like, really? Are we serious? Are we sure? But I mean, thank God for replays. So, but no, definitely really interesting to get that both background. So super cool, really great, inventive, and I love innovation. So it's always fun to see, all that, how that blurs in. So a lot of my soccer influence is definitely from my brother for sure.
I really love the story, though, of how you got started with the Earthquakes. You've been a part now for
Mm-hmm.
quite a few years. You're closing in on 5 years, right, with the
Mm-hmm.
Quakes and working across marketing and storytelling on their digital channels. But tell us how you initially got that foot in the door, right, and got connected to the team.
Yeah, it's actually a really funny story. I like to think so now. Definitely. I graduated college during COVID. Quakes have, let me backtrack a little bit. The Quakes have this program called Quakes University Rookie, which is basically just like a post undergrad rotational internship. So you do half the time in sales and half the time in a department of your choosing. It used to be an 8-month program. Saw that on teamwork, and I was like, you know what? It's back home. Like it says San Jose, it's back home. I'm like about 20 minutes away is where I'm from. So I was like, it'll be back home. Worst case worst, you get a job, you try it out, and we'll see how it goes. But how it all began was really funny. I did not know the Quakes existed at all until I hit apply, which love Jared Charlie, our president, really sweet man. Definitely really, really knows what he's doing and just a great strategic thinker in how things just work.
Did you tell him? Did you tell the president in that interview? We were like, hey, so basically didn't know you guys existed, even though I have an older brother who's been, very embedded into
100%.
soccer. Yeah, how'd that conversation go over?
Um, so when we first started our internship, you meet with the president, which is wild to think of. You're meeting the president at a company, at a club. So we go in there and it's like a 15-minute conversation. And I was like, I have no idea what to talk to this man about. Like, I don't know anything about the club. Like, I don't know if they were a thing. And so I stalked him on LinkedIn, found we went to Cal Poly together. So I was like, okay, there's 5 minutes we can talk about. So we go in there, get that over with. And then he's like, so I see that you're local. Like, were you a fan? Have you been to a game? And I'm like, I'm glad you brought it up. And then I paused and I was like, it can go two ways. I either have a really funny story and I walk out without a job,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just a really funny, funny story. And, we'll never talk about this ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm going to be really honest with you. I did not know the club existed. And I'm like, okay, sorry, did not know. Was not in my field of view at all at that point. And he kind of paused and he was like, but you live like 20, 30 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, but was not something you think about, And it's like back in like high school, it's like 2017 prime Warriors, right? So that's like on your
Got it.
top
Yep.
of mind. You've got, just the people that you keep hearing about over and over, right? And then it's people that you see around. And I'm like, and he's like, well, what could we do better? And I'm like, I never see you guys at Buffalo Wild Wings. That was my thing. I'm like, you go to
Hmm.
Buffalo Wild Wings, there's always a game on. And if it's soccer, it's like, Man City versus someone, or like, FIFA World, like something, it's always
Yeah.
like something with high stakes, or something that's easy on TV, because cable slots were a huge thing back then. Definitely Apple TV, I think, has made that much easier
Mm-hmm.
for like access. You know what time the game is on, where it's on. But and he's like, that's it, Buffalo Wild Wings. And I'm like, yeah, if
That's the
you keep
secret.
seeing something, poof. And so, fun story, wrapping this up, 2024 Leagues Cup, Buffalo Wild Wings does a promo for Leagues Cup, and San Jose Earthquakes and Jackson Mule, who was with us at the time, was right front and center on it. So, cool story. Now people know about us. So,
Full circle, full circle. But I think the interesting part of that there was that probably, the president's thinking, well, we got to be doing something better, right? I'm sure he knew, right? I'm sure that the club was like, hey, we want to grow. But that's the interesting part, I think, of your story in particular, is you're the person who's kind of come from outside of soccer for the most part, which like 95% of the guests we talk to on the podcast are like day one obsessives. But I actually learn more sometimes from people who like yourself who are not, because I think it just like we get these horse blinders and we start to lose like context, and we're drinking the Kool-Aid so much that we don't really understand how to go out and beyond that and connect with people. And so we're going to talk more about, how maybe that's changed over that period of time. But I just think there's such a really cool irony there in like your story. And now you're part of actually making sure that the next people growing up in the San Jose area actually know who the Quakes are. But with that piece, it kind of goes to my next question. How would you describe to someone outside of San Jose, like the connection, the community impact, like the role and identity of the Earthquakes within San Jose? What do they mean to the fans and the local area?
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely like a huge part of who the Quakes are, right? They've been in San Jose since day one. We're in San Jose, we play in San Jose. We always have players from San Jose, definitely a couple. Huge believers in that youth development. So we've got people from around the Bay. Like being around from like 1974, I think there's always like that tie-in, right? Like we talk about the whole fandom of like other sports like baseball, where it's like my grandpa went to a game, my great grandpa went to a game. So like, you don't have a choice in who you root for, kind of a thing. I think soccer being so new to the US, like that's not like a story yet. There's definitely a couple people that are like, oh, I went to NASL games, I went to like the indoor games, and then I went to
Yeah.
Clash. So there's definitely that pipeline building, especially
Mm-hmm.
with like 50, 60 years of history in the Bay. But definitely for San Jose, for the people that, always hustling, like that culture definitely built in. It's always been about the people. It's always been about San Jose and the Bay, and it'll continue to be. I don't think we're moving. Always been San Jose from day one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's an interesting piece, because sometimes we see with a lot of teams around the country is these cities that like, not too far away is the Bay Area, right? And then we've talked about this, like not too far south, you have like LA. Like those are two other huge markets, and yet San Jose has been more specific. And like you mentioned, since like the Earthquake started in 1974, then we had Clash, or obviously there's a little break, Clash, early MLS, like original MLS team. And then the Earthquakes continue. And it's like, I think there's something in that. We see it at a lot of different levels around the country, what it means when you go a little bit more niche down to a place and say, we're going to represent this area. Then how do you tell that story in your role? What is your kind of day-to-day look like? And where do you see
Mhm.
your place in sharing the story of the earthquakes and really like get out and connecting with people and telling those stories that really resonate?
Yeah, I think definitely a lot of it is echoing that San Jose Bay Area like storyline, right? Like whether it's people that we're bringing in for influencers, like or creators, definitely from the local market, people that are either into soccer or from the Bay, or just have a story to tell, and they're usually from here. And I think that's like the people that we want to bring in because they have a similar storyline to us, similar identity of just being from the Bay. I mean, there's so many people in the Bay, so many cool things happening. So definitely helps along. I think a lot of it is just knowing that from like a social perspective. I think you really want to kind of like honor the past, but also like look to the future. So 50 years of history is a lot of history, right? I think the first MLS game in 96 was played in San Jose against DC. Fun enough, Bruce Arena was a coach for DC at that time. So speaking of things that come back full circle, but I think when you have that much history, you kind of have to
Sure.
lay that pipe work down so that
Yeah.
people know and remember that. But there's also just this huge thing of where are we going next, right? We've got Super Bowl in February in the Bay, like the Bay is popping. People want to be here. All eyes are on
Mhm.
us. We've got a great training fields for people that come in. Just like there's gonna be so many people passing through that I think it is one of like the best times to just be in the Bay. And so doing anything we can to help grow the game.
Yeah, and with your role specifically, it's part of the larger digital marketing arm, but you're looking specifically for influencers, like key people to connect with, to bring out to the games, right? To somehow tie the story in. How do you then decide, hey, this person seems like a good fit. This person has some kind of notoriety or relevance, or, because again, you're trying to bring in interest and eyeballs from outside of like not just the pure soccer heads, right? But then also still kind of be authentic to that. So what catches your eye when you think about the right type of people or things to be able to partner with?
I definitely look at someone that has that storytelling. I think more than people, it's their story that, helps people connect with them and through them, through us. Definitely building that connection, whether it's someone that our fans and the Bay just loves in general, people that have a connection here. So it's like former players that return. We've had people like Daniel Cormier and then obviously Hunter Pence. So people that are definitely lovable figures like that, as well as just people that are from the Bay that have a great story to tell. Rico is definitely one of those. So definitely finding those stories, those people that just have something to share, have something to tell. Sometimes it's just things that line up, whether it's hey, we have a theme night we need, and we've got someone that fits that, or if it's like we have Hello Kitty night coming up, for example. So someone that loves Hello Kitty, like Die Hard, is definitely someone I'm looking for that. So like a player signing, for example, like when we got Hernan from Argentina a while ago, definitely looking into people that were huge into soccer, huge Argentinian fans. So definitely finding things that align that way, but also sometimes it's like a strategic soccer analytic breakdown guy, who's like breaking it down and he's like, oh, Hernan will fit perfectly in this 11 that Lucci
Hmm.
has set up, and just fitting that San Jose model of soccer and their style of play. So I think it's definitely like how different people with the same context can add different
Yeah.
levels to it. So it's like someone that's like, oh my god, like he's the great grandnephew of Maradona, and then it's like that title, and then you have people that are adding context that are like, oh, but his style of play is like perfect for what San Jose needs. And then it's
Hmm.
someone that's like, oh, like I played with him and he would be great for San Jose. So people that just keep adding context to the same theme that we've got going on.
Do you know if there's many other similar roles you have? Because again, it's specifically influencer marketing around
Hmm.
MLS. Have you seen it with other sports leagues?
Hmm.
We do a fair amount of connecting with people within kind of this sports marketing realm. That was one of the things that stuck out when I wanted to connect with you was like, oh, interesting. Really, it shows kind of like the impetus and the value that the
Hmm.
Quakes, you guys as a club, put on making some of these relationships that go like, I think
Hmm.
to me what comes to mind is it's going outside of your just like the realm of the club or just of
Hmm.
really like hardcore soccer people and how you bring others in with those stories. What do you think kind of gives that X factor to have, that you're able to bring with this kind of role versus other teams might want to do this, but it's under the umbrella of like a social media manager, of marketing, and it's just one of many things, whereas like you get to specialize in this.
Yeah. I mean, funny enough, that's how it all started, right? Like I did social for our first team accounts and all our main accounts at that time. And so it was just like another thing that I was doing that me and my boss were doing at the time, just like, another feather in our cap. Things that we were looking out of, because I feel like it's one of those things, it was so new 4 years ago, like in sports, in MLS. Definitely as a growing sport, you kind of learn. We're also like 6, 7 major league teams in the Bay Area. It's a very concentrated space to be in. But I feel like you're always competing against each other for the limelight. If you've got one weekend game, there's only so many people that can be like, well, there's one day I can go to a game.
Yeah.
Where am I going? Right. And you want them to be like, that's not even a question. I'm going to the Quakes game. So I think definitely buying into that, that's where we saw the value, I think, and definitely results prove that. So the stuff that we did with Rico year one definitely proved it. I think the league caught on the year after that. They started their program, which really helped. I know the Quakes definitely champion the grow the game aspect, right? We've been growing soccer in the US since 1974 and we'll continue to do so. Definitely growing it, day by day, post by post. So reaching out to people externally, I think definitely helps that, right? Like you could be talking about football and it's like, well, football, and there's always that connection. And I think there's so many tie-ins to so many things. And I think that's like the greatest thing about storytelling, right? There's so many connections to people where it's just like, you look at like, oh, like one of our players' favorite singer is this person. And then there's that storytelling, right? So I think it's just like there's so much there to tell. And then that's why there's so many people that you can collab with on different things because we're not a soccer player isn't just a soccer player, right? He's also a person, has interests. So could also be like, oh, I'm like a 2-sport athlete, right? So like plays pro soccer, but is really great at golf. Like Wanda, for example, has like really, really good game. So, we're so like multifaceted kind of people. So there's always something to tell. There's always someone to like talk about. And, you see that. You see it like Travis and Jason and their podcast, right? Like they are definitely multifaceted kind of people with different interests. So I think when you bring out the personalities and you get to know these people, it's very obvious to see where all those connections line up. But to your point, I don't think I've seen a lot of people have this as their main thing in MLS. I've seen it in NFL. I know USL had it for a point, like league wide. I think team by team, it's very much, the social team or marketing, brand marketing. It's like under them, which, to be fair, I think is all where it starts. Definitely lucky to be in a niche position like that here.
The interesting piece, though, is that you brought that word connections out. Like, I believe so strongly in, whether it's what we like to do with the podcast or a lot of our video storytelling, is always those connections, and soccer in particular, the global nature of it, the diverse nature of it. There's just so much there. And then, like you said, you have these players who have so much of their personality that some teams and some clubs I follow, it's like you really only know them maybe during games and in the practice field. And that you don't really get that other piece out that I think is really important to building relationships from the fans, to really humanizing players and just making it more interesting to follow them, right? Giving more dimensions to that.
I was just gonna say, like, the more you know someone, I feel like the more connected you are, right? The more you root for them personally. And I think that's like the power of social media these days, is you can really get to know who a player is. I mean, there's so many people, I think, across the league doing really well at this and across all sports, right? Where you've got either segments that you're doing weekly or monthly, like series that gets, like you get to know a player behind the scenes and like really get to know them, and just you fall in love with the sport, you fall in love with the team, and that's all we really want, right? We want our diehard fans and just that fan loyalty.
100%. What does your day-to-day look like then? I guess day-to-day is a question. So the things you're working on, maybe there's an element of that that's like project specific, or you mentioned, hey, we have theme nights. What does that look like for you? The things you focus on and prioritize, those responsibilities and the skills that go with that day-to-day.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is very campaign project based and like seasonal based, right? So in October, November, you're kind of looking at like, I mean, we don't know the schedule until later in the year, but you're kind of looking at what theme nights are we looking at, potential people we can reach out to. You've got Jersey launch, which is coming up for us pretty soon. So, you're definitely finding people that connect with the storyline of your jersey and the theme of it. So then you're reaching out to those people in specific and connecting with them and kind of really putting a story together on how to tell the story of the jersey. So there's stuff like that and early in the year, and there's obviously home opener coming up. So it's how can we talk about the home opener? Who are we playing? What the theme is for that? What's going on in the stadium? And if there's anyone that can talk about that. Do we have any new food items? And then we get the foodies out for that. And then game by game, like you mentioned, we have theme nights. So you're targeting different people, which helps kind of just grow that brand awareness of the club, but also just get people interested. If a fun little item can bring you to the game, I don't see a problem in it. We've seen that with Taylor Swift and football, right? It's like you have dads and daughters watching the game together just to, catch a glimpse of her. And I think that is great. And that is exactly what we need. We need bonding moments. And any connection, like we talked about, right? A connection is a foot in the door. And I think that's exactly what we need for a sport that continues to grow. So a lot of it is just theme by theme, night by night. And then you get into tournaments, right? So you've got like Open Cup, you've got Leagues Cup, and then obviously we've got like international games and friendlies that are coming in. So it's like, oh, is there like, a nationality connection? Like if we have Colombia coming in, like I think Colombia played at Levi's last year, so for the Gold Cup. So we had a Colombian on the team at the time. And so it's like, there's like just a natural connection there, right? You wanted a little meet and greet or something from him. There's some natural connections that just kind of happen throughout the season, right? It
Right.
could be the Niners signed someone. And, I think the Giants had signed a couple of Venezuelan players. So obviously we had Joseph go out and meet them.
Hmm.
Guy Santos was got called up to the Warriors from the Santa Cruz Warriors. So obviously being a Brazilian, we had four at the time. So he was definitely super excited to meet them. And I know they were like previously connected. And so it was just like a natural connection there. He really cranked that siren, which we loved.
Yeah.
I think there's always like natural connections there that you kind of just fall into as things happen, right? Being one of the few teams in the area. So a lot of that, they got new signings, we have new signings, and natural connections like that just build. So just keeping track of things.
There's obviously a lot of strategy, and you're trying to align values and people who are storytelling in a way that fits with the goal or the particular flavor of the project you're working on. On a level of measuring success, how do you as a team look at, hey, this campaign went really well, this specific night went well? And is there a difference between maybe Hello Kitty night we sold out, right, and as a total
Mm-hmm.
sellout, which is obviously great, but maybe our social media storytelling, our content around that didn't perform to the same level? Like, how do you guys view that, and what are those discussions like as a team when you're measuring if this really worked or not?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think it has like layers to it, right? Like we did Star Wars night last year, which we're bringing back this year. And, we definitely had like merch items. So there was like a giveaway, and then you have like merch items that can be purchased at the store that we worked with Star Wars for. So, it's like, again, did that sell out? How quickly did it sell out? Did people really enjoy it? We had cast and characters out from you know, Star Wars. So, you had Princess Leia out, and stormtroopers, and I think, things like that. Like you can definitely walk around and feel that people were excited
Were the
and really
stormtroopers wearing
into
a
it.
Quakes kit? Did they have the Quakes kit over top?
No, no. That would have been funny. No, they were decked out in their gear, but I think definitely super like there's like the metrics that you can see and the metrics that you can feel, right? Quantitative versus qualitative. And definitely like you could walk around, feel the vibe, feel the energy. So I thought that was a win in my book. But the numbers, I think, definitely spoke for them. Princess Leia was on the siren, and I think like, just like every way that you can tell the story, signage in the stadium, on the scoreboard was definitely on theme. And I think when you pull like a story together that like visually branding, I think it was really great. And so I think, and then you just look at the numbers, you see how social performed, is there something more we can do? And I guess, checked all the boxes. And so we're doing it again this year. But to your point, I think it's also like, sometimes it's not a whole night, right? It could just be like one activation versus a whole night. So obviously our game with Miami last year didn't really need a theme night, right? I think it was a huge thing on its own. So it was a sellout. So you have that. Um, and then we had a special limited edition scarf for that weekend, for that game
Okay.
in specific. So it's like one of those scarves where it's like half Miami, half us. So it's
Yep.
like
Yeah. The
you
half and
versus
half
the
scars.
opponent.
Sure.
Exactly. So it had like the day, the time, and then I think it was like three of our superstars, and sold out within minutes. And which is crazy because I walked over and I was like, oh, like I wanted to get like photos of people with it, and they're like, honey, that was gone like 5 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes ago. Like, where you been? And I was like, oh, okay. Like people are still like waiting to get in. Like it was crazy, but we still had like pins and other merch. So definitely a huge hit. And I think, that was the Messi Mania that, I think you've heard it around the league. But
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely different ways to evaluate every night and every piece of content that we put out, right? Some campaigns are just brand awareness and when you sign a player. So sometimes that's just like, hey, like this person's in town. I think when you have people like Chucky with San Diego, like I think, there's like sometimes it's like the height of the player and their own brand, I think like speaks for
Sure.
itself, right?
Yeah.
Like
And the
people knew
attention they
Chucky
bring just with their name, right? Yeah.
100%. Exactly. Like they're a household name, right? Like Messi and all the people that he brought with him, right? I think like they kind of spoke for themselves. Like everyone was talking about it and you had to, right? It's like then it brought up like the whole DP rules and like all that. And
Hmm.
I think just stirring conversation, which is what you want with signings, right? You want people talking about it to talk about how that, again, how they fit into the model, how it's fitting into the league, and how, the league is going and comparing with other leagues. Like Hernan carried it on his own. You've got Mueller with Vancouver, like kind of carried it on its own, right? So I would say there's stuff like that, but then there's also when you bring in a player that I think has a great story. I
Hmm.
think yes, it kind of tells its own. If you're like
Mm-hmm.
2024, our league's cup run, I think, talk of the town, right? Like getting to quarterfinals. Uh, I think when you're in a run for something like that, or it's like, you have a really blowout game, kind of like a talk of its own. But when it comes to something like, oh, like then it's just metrics, like, right, how much engagement are you getting? How many clicks? How many hits? How many people are talking about us? Oh my God, you're on ESPN, right? Things
Hmm.
like that. But there's also little things as like, oh, like it could be a smaller podcast guy, right? That maybe just only talks about football. All of a sudden, he's talking about you. And it's like, might not have the following, but he has that engagement. He has
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
it might be only like, 10, 20K followers, but it's like that video blew up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think there's always things that you're looking at. You're looking at like, are they a reliable source? Do they know what they're talking about? Or is it one of those? I mean, sometimes even those people that just like talk to talk, like I think is always a little fun and entertaining. They add a little piece to like whatever you're talking about for sure, spurring conversation. But definitely like each piece has its own metric, whether it's brand awareness or you're trying to push an agenda or something, or just, have people know about what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up there even just people talking about or basically non-official Quakes channels and
Mm-hmm.
accounts talking about you guys in some way. And there's the range of ESPN is as big as it gets, right? In many cases,
Mm-hmm.
down to a little bit more niche type of footy specific followers and
Mm-hmm.
podcasts and things like that. And it's really just about getting the word out. Again, depending on the goals. When you look around at the different platforms you guys are using, how do you, in general, shape how you're telling the stories based on platform and on a specific type of piece of content? Because I think that's something that a lot of people listening might be curious. A lot of people are probably getting wrong with, just rinse and repeating a lot of things. Sometimes that's based on their own bandwidth. They might not have a team. It's just an individual. But how do you guys perceive the benefits, the type of people, and then the way you're shaping stories based on if it's Instagram versus Facebook versus TikTok, etc.?
I mean, definitely, I think we all start out with that whole like hit mass publish everywhere, and there's definitely pieces of content that you do mass publish everywhere, right? Like you blew out LA like 4-1, like you're posting that everywhere. So I think there's definitely pieces that you do, right? Like your starting 11, your final score, hey, it's game day, watch us here. Those I think are, examples of content that goes everywhere. New player signing, player departure, like an injury report that goes everywhere, goal videos that goes everywhere, right? Or a huge save. Like for example, Daniel had like a great. I've never seen someone stop a PK in real life, so that blew my mind. Things like that goes everywhere. I mean, that shows you like how like new I was to soccer. I think that was in Colorado a couple of years ago. So definitely shocking. I was like, wait, I don't know people could do that in real life and it's not like a movie. But things like that go everywhere. And then you have content that is, I think, specific to platform, or just like how it could be like the same story, you just shape it differently, right? Like it could be it's in a video format for Reels because Reels do better than I think static posts sometimes on Instagram, but it's also depends on the content, right? Sometimes like a quote graphic might do better than like the whole interview clip, but if you
Right.
cut that out quote, maybe it does better. Sometimes they're also just like, throw it, see what sticks. It could also just be like, algorithm changing, whatever. Was there a collab on something? Was there not? Was there a tag? Maybe someone reshared that post and it kind of blew up from there. So there's like definitely different things, but I think if you can reformulate just how you're posting the same piece of content differently, I think you can see like an improvement on that. Like when Threads launched, I think it was a lot more conversational. And like really, I think that really helped me get to know our fans more. You're having conversations with them, just like, little threads back and forth, learning things. And I think, a lot more meme graphics on that end and photos versus I think like Twitter and Facebook are our main like news, what's going on with the game, what's going on with the team,
Got it. Okay.
versus like Instagram and maybe even like Facebook, where it comes to like reels, can be a lot more of your player personalities and like other content. One, because I think people are used to seeing that on there, but I think it's also just like the nature of what our fans are like on those platforms. But, I think you kind of just have to see what the people are like on each of your accounts for you because it could be different.
Yeah, it's interesting though that you bring out threads maybe being more conversational. You learn different things
Mhm,
about fans depending on the platform. And then also the testing of essentially it's the same story, but it's just how you express that,
mhm,
whether it's a carousel, whether it's a video interview, maybe it's just, text, that versus the news on the website,
mhm,
whatever it could be. I think that's something people often overlook is that you have one central story. It's just how many ways you can express that. So, like,
mhm,
you don't have to think of 10 stories. How can you tell the one story in 10 different, like,
mhm,
express it 10 different ways, right? Based on a type of video, short, long, image
mhm,
carousels, in a picture with the caption. I think that's one way that people can kind of like
mhm.
maybe not that it makes it a ton easier to create all of that, but like you don't have to think of a million ideas, right? And concepts.
I have a perfect example for that actually when you brought it up, of like that one story and 10 ways of sharing it. Like let's say we do a press release about so we had Emmy Ochoa on our team, came up through our academy, right, from Salinas and is now with Cruz Azul. He was at FIFA U17 World Cup a couple of years ago and kind of like framing that story. There's a press release out. I think it was him representing Mexico, Cruz and Oscar representing the US. So obviously, they're going to head, and it was like, how do we tell that story? And like he did great in that whole stretch as a keeper. And so it's like, how do you tell those stories? So like, you break it down that way. And obviously, that's something you could take to like your like soccer guru kind of a guy who's breaking it down and be like, oh, like Emmy Ochoa is like one of the greatest like upcoming keepers and like, stat. But when it came to what we did, we kind of found like this niche on TikTok around that time frame where it was, you kind of tell like the story of how did this player become who he is today, kind of a
Got
thing.
it.
We talked about Cade Cowell, like growing up. Um, we talked about how Cruz came up through the pipeline. And then obviously we did like Emi Ochoa, we did JT, coming up. He played like the first homegrown, like MLS homegrown game that there was, which is now MLS Next All-Star, basically. So kind of like, going through that. So I think like in a way, it was like another way to like remind the fans like who these players were. Because it's like you might not see Emmy on the first team at that point, but he was like a regular on the second team, right? Like starting keeper for the second team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think obviously training with the first team, stepping in when needed. But if you're a casual fan, if someone's not in like the starting 11 or the starting five, I think it's like out of sight, out of mind, right? It's like loyalists, people that know, or people that are a fan of a person that kind of, track them through their story. So it was like another way of being like, oh, like I know that team. Like he played, I think, RC Celta de Vigo. So it's like, oh, like I know that team. You hear that. And I think it's just like different ways to connect. So, I think it's like different ways to get different people involved and just like part of the conversation, but also
Mm-hmm.
reminding people that like, hey, like, there's like that growth, that pathway that we talk about in MLS and the US right now. So definitely to your point, like, there are different ways to share the same story. Definitely exploring that. It definitely takes a lot of work. And I totally see, you got to have the bandwidth and the team for that. But if you can somewhat see the vision, there's definitely a lot to do from there.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. You're mentioning a lot of the players, a lot of the guys who have come up. This is a great little segue into our all-time five-a-side. I'm
Oh man.
expecting a couple of Quakes picks for sure, and I'm curious to see what
Yeah.
other ones you have here, Perna. But all-time five-a-side, you have to pick yourself. So we know you're the famous swimmer. However, you do have to put yourself in this team somewhere.
That
So you got
was
to put
hard.
four legends, four OGs around you, so you don't have to do
Oh my
anything.
God.
Goalie's
Exactly.
optional. Goalie's optional, but what's your picks here? Tell us your squad.
Okay, so I was narrowing this down, right? Like as you would, you go like top seven, and then it's like, and then I had five, and then I realized I had to put myself in. But we're gonna go like a little deep into some lore here. I would take, I wrote this down. I would take 01 to 03 Prime Joe Cannon in the net.
Okay,
I would
nice.
take 01 to 03 Prime Landon Donovan. And then I would take 2010 to 2015, like MVP GOAT Chris Wando.
Yep, Wando.
And then I would take Wayne Rooney. And this is
You're
where
one
I was
on
like, okay,
Quakes.
do I win one Quakes? I was like, okay, do I take Messi as someone that, why not? Or would I take someone, this is where I was like, okay, where do I, like if I'm plotting them out, and then of
Hmm.
course you have to add
It
myself,
should
which
be
is what makes
tough.
this
It
even
should be tough to
hard.
choose. That's the point.
It was
So I'm
hard.
glad you
I
had a
think
lot
the
of
last person,
turmoil here.
I don't know. I'm like, do I go with, like, I've gotten people like in their primes, and even, like currently, I feel like, Wayne Rooney could still get people for a run for his money. One day definitely can. But, do I get someone with some growth? Like, I was thinking about Pau Cabrusi from Barca. He's been talked about as one of like the upcoming greats with great
Yes, he
potential.
is.
But I
Wow,
think
yeah.
I think we'll stick. I think if you have Messi and Wando and Landon Donovan at the top, I think you'd be unbeatable. So I think I'll stick with that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was waiting. I didn't know if you were going to give your brother an honorable mention, maybe a bench spot here. Put him in with the rest.
You know what I would put him as? I would put him in like the analytics side. I'd have him like on the coaching side.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Part of the
Yeah.
staff. I like how you were
I'd give him a
specific too on
little,
the. Yeah. Yeah. He's gonna be breaking everything down, right? I think he's gonna be picking
oh,
on you in the
100%.
tech. I think you set yourself up
Oh,
for that.
100%.
Yeah.
He's like, you
Yeah.
haven't moved at all. You're jogging. What are
Yeah.
you doing? And I'm like, with
And
those
you just
people, I'm just
point at
like,
the
oh,
rest of
you
the
want me to
team.
pass the
Exactly.
ball? Exactly. I'm just like, it's like, I'm the talker. I'm the yapper back there. I'm like, Wanda's open. But no, for
I
sure.
like how you were
Give that
specific
man
about the
adrenaline
the
for sure.
eras too. You were like, I need this
I
version of this
mean,
version. So
you
you're
got
very,
to.
very
I
being
feel
particular, so we can really envision that.
I feel like if you like break it down, right? I mean, I think it's like a pretty brandable, marketable team, right? Like I think, you got like Landon with like the white hair and like, the
Yeah.
blonde tips
Yeah.
and everything. And like Joe Cannon in that era, it was like the goalie wars era, right? So I
Yep.
think, all that marketability, I think Chris Wanda was putting goals in like it was nothing. So
Hmm.
I think there's that. Wayne and Rooney, you gotta have like a Brit, right? Um, so definitely that, I think great. It's like
Love
my
that.
own little like Spice Girls in a way. So
Awesome. Love that squad there. And the final one here, Prerna, that we're going to get to, we're
Mhm.
on the Because Football podcast. So I want to hear your answer. Can you complete the sentence
Mm,
for us? Because football, dot, dot, dot.
ooh. Okay, this is even harder than the five-a-side. I would say because football, there's community. Soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, I think is the world's game, right? I think it connects people. I feel like you could go anywhere in the world and, there's people playing, there's people juggling on the street.
Definitely.
I think a couple of our guys went to Morocco for a US call up and they're like, we walked outside and kids were playing. You don't feel out of place anywhere, right? Like our academy kids,
Hmm.
they went
Hmm.
to London last year. I think the youngest went to Mexico. They're going to Portugal in a couple weeks. Everywhere you go, someone's playing. And I think that is the greatest thing ever, right? When we talk about communication and, connection, like even if there's a language barrier, you pick up a ball, no one's gonna, I think we can all get along and we can all have fun. So there's definitely community. And I think that's what's great about it. Everyone plays, everyone loves it, everyone's got an opinion. So,
Yeah, definitely.
but yeah,
Definitely. Awesome. Great
especially
answer.
the soccer, football, huge, huge conversation there.
I
So.
know I'm over that one. I get that every once in a while on our posts, and people are like, well, somebody posted the other day, he's like, if you want people to take you seriously, start calling it football. And I'm like, dude, just you're wasting everybody's time. First of all, we're called Because Football. So obviously, like, I get it. But when I say soccer, you know exactly
Yes,
what I mean. I'm bored of it at this point.
exactly.
But talk about engagement, right? Giving people something to complain about. So brilliant. Prerna, thank you so
Exactly.
much. We are going to put the links in the description here. What's a good way for people to get in touch if they want to reach out?
Hit me up on LinkedIn or DM me on Instagram. Those are always fun to read. Definitely had some great conversations there. So definitely hit me up. We'd love to chat.
Perfect. As I mentioned, all the links there are in the description, so make sure to do that. And everybody listening and watching, thank you guys for being here, for being a part of it. And Prerna, thanks for sharing your story. We had a great time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on. Always fun to chat
Absolutely.
about the Quakes and about soccer.
Yeah. Good luck to the Quakes this season. Hope you guys have a great year. And good luck to you getting through preseason and all these signings and all the fun stuff here as you move on. But no, it was amazing. And like we said, for everybody here listening and watching, thank you guys for being here. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Appreciate it.